it is time to get some stuff done. All right. If you are new to the channel, what we are doing in this specific time during the video is we will be talking about dissecting and deep diving into what you see here, which is the computer interface for the HX Stomp, an exceptional pedal that is a multi-effects unit in just one small pedal. So this time, in this episode, we're going to be going over essentially what is the rest of the pedal, leaving out a couple of things. So far, we've gone over all of the effect types: pitch, synth, filter, wah, reverb, delay, modulation, EQ, dynamics. But what we have yet to approach and to talk about are what really compromises the vast majority of this pedal, which is the distortion, amp and cab simulator, amp simulator, preamp simulator, and cab simulator. This is the stuff that we're probably going to spend the least amount of time on, because all of this is so hyper-specifically designed for guitar that it, out of all of the things that we have in this pedal, it applies the very least. So I'm going to start with the distortion, and then we'll get into this stuff. But, you know, the distortion is where you're going to stay. If you're a saxophone player, trumpet player, trombone player, anything like that, you will very rarely, if ever, unless you have a whole different way of approaching it, which is cool, but unlikely that you will spend a lot of time in amp plus cab, amp, preamp, or cab. The red ones are red because they don't want us to go there. So let's talk about distortion. Distortion, as most of you know, is the stuff that you throw on your sound when you want to sound hyper-aggressive and cool and rock and rolly and all of that. It can have other uses, but this is its main use. So what you see here, just like all the other effects, you have a ton of distortions. You have stuff that mimics specific pedals. You have fuzzes. You have all kinds of stuff. So let's just talk about some of it. I'm not going to go through all of it because not all of it is applicable, but talking about the general approach is interesting and applicable. So Kinky Boost is just that. It's just a boost, right? A little bit of drive, right? You can have the boost on or off, and then the drive will give you a little bit more oomph. So let's just hear what that sounds like. 5.3 drive, boost off. So that was no effect, and the effect after it. You can hear it adds a little meatiness to it. Let's turn it all the way up, see what happens. You can hear it pushing it, makes it a little crunchier. I'm going to turn it back to like 4.8, put the boost and the bright on. So the bright just tightens it up a little bit. So that's just a boost. Now we're starting to get into pedals. And you can hear probably the rushing and the sound of gain. But the one we're going to focus on first is the one that I think is one of the most useful. This is called the Minotaur. If you're familiar with the guitar pedal world, there is something called the Pelotor, or the Klon, the Klon Centaur. The Klon Centaur is now the most expensive pedal in the world. It's like a $5,000 pedal. And some people are selling it for upwards of $15,000. It's insane. But it's a very transparent, meaning your tone still stays within it. And it just beautiful, warm, crunchy thing. And so this is a digital recreation, or attempted a digital recreation of that. So let's hear some of that. Let's go gain up, tone down, darken it up a little bit, and here we go. It's a lot of fun doing that. So let's just bring the tone up and see what that sounds like. It's really potent. It's real powerful. So let's max out the gain, bring the tone down a little bit, and see what that sounds like. So in the interest of having a good time, here's what it would sound like with power chords. So, multiple saxophones, essentially, made by the whammy going into this distortion to mimic a guitar doing power chords. Hell yeah! So this one right here, this is one of the big reasons why, and an excellent example of why not to get too deep into this effects thing. Sorry, not the effects thing, this distortion thing specifically. Get deep into the effects thing. The distortion thing, maybe save that till later, because as you can hear, this sounds really good. It's like warm and like crunchy and awesome, but so much of that being applicable in a live setting is me using this intro mic, this specialized mic that goes inside my mouthpiece, which blocks out most of the ability for there to be feedback. When you're using distortion live, and we're going to go through only distortion stuff today, so this applies across the board, and you're using a conventional microphone on a stand or a clip-on, feedback is almost inevitable and is extremely challenging to get under control. So when I go through all of these, just keep that in mind, that you're going to have to take extra steps to make sure this is actually usable live. And a lot of these won't even allow you to get there because of the way that they focus on specific parts of the tonal spectrum. This one is great because it has the tone thing here, right? And I can go super highs that are pushing, which will help with feedback, creating it, that is, or bring it down more towards the low mid-range where the feedback will be less likely to happen. This is my favorite one here, the Minotaur. Now, the Timar is a recreation of a famous pedal in Nashville called the Timmy, and I'm just going to go with the basic preset that they pre-assign. It sounds like this. Now that's a very good sounding one. However, that one really does have a lot of highs in it, and so you got to be careful live. The heir apparent is Prince of Tone, the pedal, the Prince of Tone. It's what it's recreating. And then the bigger version is the Tone Sovereign, which is the King of Tone, which sounds like this on the HX Stomp. So here's the deal. Essentially what you're going to hear is that these all have a little bit of a different sound, a little bit different EQ of this distortion. So I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to keep clicking, and so that you can hear how different they can really sound, and then it's up to you to really find what you like. And of course, any of these sounds can be altered and messed with. So we'll go through a bunch of the distortion pedal recreations here. I want to stop on this one because this is an excellent example of very high gain, likely to feedback sound. Now this sounds cool. Like that sounds really dope, but this will feed back if you use this live. I can just feel it and I can just hear it. There's no question this will feed back. So let's keep going. This next one, the Scream 808, that mimics a TS 808, which is an Ibanez pedal that many people use. Stevie Ray Vaughan used it very famously. It's a great pedal in real life, so let's hear what it sounds like with us in digital form. Now, what you're also noticing is that single notes with the distortion on saxophone sound very different than two notes at a time with the power chord. So you have to be aware of that when you're setting up your presets. So we're going to skip around a little bit now. You see, this goes on forever. There's so much of it. So everything up to the legendary drive, this is all just different distortion pedal sounds. So you can go crazy. Now, Fuzz. Fuzz is a different kind of distortion. We cover that in one of our books. I believe it is chapter 5. Distortion, overdrive, and fuzz. But maybe it's chapter 6. Don't remember. Anyway, check both of them out. Fuzz is a little bit different and actually can be a little bit easier to use live because it's got more consistency to its distorted frequencies. So let's hear what some of these sound like. That's cool. A little synthesizer-y. That's wild. I'm going to try to use that. Holy crap. That's really cool. All right. Industrial fuzz. That one 100% will feed back live. Don't even worry about it. Triangle fuzz. Very cool. So you can see there's a lot of fuzzes. Now it gets into some other different stuff down here. Megaphone. This is probably just EQing you to sound like a megaphone. Cool. Bit Crusher, which is a very digital sort of distortion, which is popular these days. Check this out. Very cool. Definitely will feed back. And then we have just some recreations of various, I think, amp heads that have distortion in them. So check this out. So there you go. You can see that this can be a little blinding. There's just so much of all of the same kind of sound. Your tone is still the most important. So I like the Minotaur, and I think that all of them have value. You just got to keep trying all of them. They all do essentially the same thing, just with different EQs and degrees of insanity. Now, we could go into the legacy, but it's all the same stuff. It really is. You should try all of it. It's all useful, but it's just the least useful out of all of it. It's the hardest to use live because of all the feedback issues. It is the least applicable to traditional situations, because there's so many other people doing distorted stuff on stage. If you're going to do distortion, it can be very, very useful and very wonderful, but you just gotta, you know, temper your expectations with what is applicable live with certain kinds of microphones, and also realize that there's so much of this type of sound in this HX Stomp that it's overwhelming, and you shouldn't feel bad about being like, this is the one I like, I'm picking this one. That's totally fine, because now we're going to go to this section that we're really going to breeze through, because amp, cab, amp, preamp, and cab, these are all modelers. These are digitally built to model real-life pieces of machinery that are hyper-specific to guitar. So amp and cab is what you'd probably think of as a guitar amp. So this is right here. Like, first of all, look how many there are. There's like 100 of them. Unbelievable. There's so much. And this is what guitar players really buy this pedal for, is it has really good amp modeling for what it is. So, so like a Tweed Blues Bright, that's mimicking a Fender amp. Look at all of these crazy different parameters, right? But it's just more, for our purposes, no different than distortion. It's pushing the gain, and it has a specific special EQ for that, for its own identity. So that's mimicking just normal amps, which means the amplifier with a speaker. The amp and cab, because the cab is the speaker, the amp is the amplifier. So here's another one. Again, the same general idea and identity as the distortion pedals, just they are built to mimic specific guitar amps, so they have their own specific distorted sound. Like this one, Cali, Texas, Channel 1. That is a I don't know what that is. That might be a Mesa Boogie, something like that. I don't know. So that's amp and cab. Now, amp simulator is the same thing. It's just the amplifier without the specific speaker identity as well. So this is just the tonal sonic identity of these various famous amplifiers. Now check this out. Like, again, same amount of stuff. It's crazy. Now you'll notice that these have the same names and assignments. Amp, cab, and amp, they combine two things. So amp and cab. We'll get into that in a second. So these are famous amps without any cabinet sound added in there. So this is just what the amp sounds like if you were to plug headphones into the amp. Same as all the other stuff before. Now we'll skip preamp and go to cab. Cab is literally mimicking the sounds that specific models of speakers make. So like they're probably the most popular speaker companies, the Celestion speakers. And let's see if they have them. Greenback. So that's a Celestion Greenback. 4x12 means this is mimicking the sound of the cabinet, meaning this selection of speakers where there are 4 12-inch Celestion Greenback 20s in there. So with these cabinets, you can actually change the style of mic. SM57, a 409, ribbon mics, condenser mics, dynamic mics. You can change the way all of this reacts, all with the purpose of mimicking real life, real mics, real amps that guitar players would use. This has so much less of a meaningful identity for us sonically because our tone comes from here. This is how guitar players really create their tone. So you could go through all the preamps, which is just another set of really famous preamps made by famous amp companies. The amp, cab, amp, preamp, and cab sections are essentially, for our purposes, just selections of different presets that have different EQ with different amounts of drive. That's pretty much all it is when it comes to the way that we can use it. So I encourage you to go through all of it. I encourage you to check it out and to give it a listen and to see if you find anything you like. But it is an immense amount of material to go through. You have so much stuff here. I mean, look at all of that. And then all of these preamps, holy shit. And then all of these amps. and then all of these amp plus cab. It's just so much. It's more than half the pedal. And that's fine, because for guitar players, this is where the money is. This is creating the best tone you can. For us, this is just having a little bit of EQ and a little bit of gain. So then the last piece to really talk about in this pedal are the volume and pan sections, which is pretty much essentially letting you have control of a volume pedal by using an expression pedal. That's all it is. And then you have send and returns, which we won't talk about. And then you have a looper. There's two loopers. There's a looper here, which now you can't really see its interface on here because the interface is mostly on the actual pedal itself. So there's two loopers, a shifting looper, a shuffling looper, which can do all sorts of weird, crazy stuff, and then a switch looper, which is the more conventional type. So just so you know, there are loopers and volume pedals within the HX Stomp to kind of round out the utilities that you would need to have an all-in-one situation like this can give you. So that is it. That is the HX Stomp. Hope you enjoyed this series. We're going to get at you with a new, more complicated set of pedals coming up next time.